What's going on? Welcome into another episode of the Fantasy Football Fellows podcast. We're all back. We're all in the same place. Tyler's back this week.
I'm back, baby.
Tyler, how was Arizona?
It was hot. It was hot, but it was a lot of fun and much needed. So
just like these takes coming up.
Oh, nice. I love it.
Cameron, how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. Just like last week, it's just a Tuesday. So we're just kind of every day it comes. I'm excited for the nighttime, but the days are long. So
I feel that.
We got to come up with a hashtag for Tuesdays. You know what I'm saying?
Hashtag worst day of the week. That's my hot take this week.
Put it on a t-shirt.
Put it on a t-shirt. I love it. Well, let's just jump into it right away. Tyler's back, so that means we got Hot Take Ty back with us. We're going to be cruising through the NFC East this week. We're going to start with the New York Giants and the Washington football team today. So based on those two teams, Tyler, what's Hot Take Ty got to say this week?
Oh, well, first I got to say, we asked about Arizona and stuff, but I have to officially say it's a pleasure to bring you another hot take this week, ladies and gentlemen. My hot take this week is about Washington football team wide receiver Curtis Samuel. And I don't think many people are aware of where he finished last year. He finished wide receiver 24.
In a crowded wide receiver room as well.
In a very crowded wide receiver room. And he now recently signed with Washington from Carolina. And my hot take is that he finishes as a top 25 wide receiver again this year with Ryan Fitzpatrick under center and Terry McLaurin across the field from him.
And Logan Thomas in that mix too.
Logan Thomas too.
And the mighty Adam Humphries.
Oh, jeez.
Hot take. Adam Humphries finished as a top 40 wide receiver. I'm just kidding.
Is he on your rankings at all?
Yeah.
Or?
He's not in that top 150.
Top 150. Oh man. Well, we're not going to start with the Washington football team. Per usual, we're going to go in order of who we think is going to finish last in the division, work our way up towards the top. We had the New York Giants finishing in last place in this division, which I don't know if it's really that unpopular, but they're getting back arguably their best player this season, Saquon Barkley. He missed pretty much all of last season with his knee injury. He's pretty much back to consensus first round. We all have him in the top 7. Tyler, you have him at running back 7, Cameron running back 5. I have him at running back 6. Tyler, how certain are we that Saquon returns to top 5 running back, let alone top 10 running back status this year?
I think it's a guarantee that it's a top 10 return. Just the biggest question is, does he stay healthy? And I think I want to think that it all goes right for him this year, that he doesn't pick up an injury, because I think the 1 year that he was fully healthy, he finished as running back 1.
Yep.
So he's shown that he's, one of, if not the most physically gifted and dynamic running backs in the league.
Yeah. For sure.
I think top 5, it's hard to say just because of all the other running backs. I mean, you have McCaffrey, you have Cook, you have Kamara, you have Derrick Henry. And then that 5th spot is kind of up for grabs. You could throw in Saquon, you could throw in Ezekiel Elliott, you could throw in Nick Chubb.
I see Jonathan Taylor go that high.
Jonathan Taylor's going that high too. So that 5th spot is really up for grabs.
For sure.
It wouldn't surprise me if he takes that 5th spot, but top 10 for sure. Top 5 is a bit of a question mark for me.
Yeah, I think the other thing you have to remember too in his running back 1 season, Eli Manning was still a quarterback. He got insane volume in the passing game that year.
91 catches.
91?
Like Christian McCaffrey.
No.
Volume.
What?
2,000 yards from scrimmage on 91 catches.
Sure.
Sorry.
But I mean, I think that's it. I think top 5 might be a little bit of a stretch. He's either going to be right at 5 or he's going to be somewhere between 5 and 10. He's going to be right in that middle range.
Yeah.
I don't think he falls any lower than 10, but I mean, I think we put it in our social media at the FFLs on Instagram.
Quick plug.
Floor of running back 11, which I think is probably fair. Any closing remarks on that game?
No, I agree with everything you say.
Excellent. Perfect. Let's move on to, speaking of passing volume, goodness. Kenny Gallaudet signed with the New York Giants this offseason to add a dynamic pass catcher to that offense. We all kind of have them at very different points. Tyler, you're at wide receiver 19. I'm at wide receiver 22. Cameron, you have him inside your top 15. We're playing the more conservative approach, knowing that Danny Dimes is still at quarterback, downgrades from Matt Stafford, obviously, but you're still feeling pretty gung-ho on him. Explain to the people, why are you still so gung-ho on Kenny Gallaudet this season?
I think it's because he's the guy that's going to stretch the field on that offense. He's 6'4", 200 pounds, and he goes up and gets every ball. He's just a physical beast, and I think that's kind of what Danny Dimes needs. Is he's got like Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton and Kadarius Toney even are going to get open, but Daniel Jones needs that outlet that he can trust to go get that ball. And that was supposed to be Evan Ingram last year, but Evan Ingram just has not panned out. Like, he's a great athlete. He's
like Chris Herndon. I'm just kidding.
But I mean, he's the Chris Herndon who gets playing time. That's what he is. He can't catch the ball. Like, it's unreal. But Kenny Gallaudet goes up and gets that ball, and I know he's going to lose targets just because there's so many people that need targets. But at the same time, I think he's a guy who's going to have pretty ridiculous yards per catch average this year. And I think he's going to put up some touchdowns. That's why I have him higher, because I think he's going to be a great red zone target this year.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think if anything, you're really banking on touchdown dependency, dependency, but touchdown upside with Kenny Gallaudet. Tyler, anything to add on to that?
No, not really. I guess, it depended on the matchup for when like Sterling Shepard would have been involved in the game and stuff. And I think Gallaudet is such a step above Shepard that it doesn't matter if you need to scheme Gallaudet up. He'll produce anyway.
He's another guy though that needs to stay healthy.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's when he becomes fantasy relevant. Because last year he finished as like wide receiver 105, but it's because he missed 13 games or whatever.
Yeah, he missed the rest of the season after I acquired him and thought I perfected my team. But anyways. Yeah, no disagreement there. I only have him outside of my top 20 only because there are a few guys that I think might get more consistent volume than Kenny Gallaudet, who might have a little bit more upside. But man, those wide receivers from like 15 on, you could probably put in almost any order. And I'm not going to shrug too much at it.
We posted about Kenny Gallaudet, I think, on our Instagram on a little player spotlight.
At DFF fellas.
Yep. Quick plug again.
Give us a follow, hit it with the likes, share it.
Anyways. That basically Gallaudet should fit comfortably as your wide receiver 2 on your team. And if you can get him as your flex, that is a home run of a flex.
Yeah.
So
his ADP is like 60 right now. So he's going in that end of 4th, beginning of 5th range, which is really good for a guy that could be your wide receiver 2.
Yeah,
sure.
I think a lot of people are drafting him more so closer to his floor than closer to his ceiling, which I don't think is a bad spot to try and acquire Kenny Gallaudet.
Which I will admit, that's where I have him ranked, is closer
to his ceiling. Yes. Yeah, but that's how these rankings work. Some guys are going to have closer to the ceiling just based on other guys around them. Other guys you're going to have closer to their floor. Yes. That's just how this all works. So let's go on to the guy who's going to be passing Kenny Gallaudet and hopefully Saquon Barkley to get close to 70 receptions this season. The football, Daniel Jones entering his 3rd year into the NFL now. This could be a who needs convincing segment. I think both of you need convincing, but I'll let it go only because I originally did have Daniel Jones outside of my top 20. I have him inside now at QB 18. Tyler, you're at QB 25. Cameron, disgraceful QB 29. No respect for a guy who can get it done with his legs.
Who's behind him? I want to
know. Andy Dalton.
Okay.
Zach Wilson.
Okay.
And
Sam Darnold.
Drew Lock.
Oh, Drew Lock.
I got Darnold ahead of him.
By one spot.
No, I got Fixies. I got Trey Lance one spot ahead of him. All right. So he's 27. Then he's 26 because I got Goff spot ahead of him too. He's 26.
Okay.
Wait, you
Point
have
be-
Goff in front of Daniel Jones?
Yeah, I know.
Okay, I don't like Daniel Jones, but I know for a fact that Daniel Jones can do better in fantasy than Jared Goff.
I'm going to tell you why Daniel Jones is going to be better than Jared Goff, going to be better than some of the other guys you even have ranked ahead of him. Okay, so without Saquon Barkley, Daniel Jones has been abysmal. 15 games without Saquon Barkley, 77.1 passer rating, 2,991 passing yards, and yikes, he has more interceptions than touchdowns, 12 touchdowns to 13 interceptions. That's pretty bad. So normally that would justify your ranking.
Yep. Exactly.
But we got Saquon Barkley back this year. Daniel Jones has played more games without Saquon Barkley than with Saquon Barkley. In 12 games with Saquon, Daniel Jones has got his passer rating up then to 91.5, thrown for 2,979 passing yards, 23 touchdowns,
Holy crap.
9 interceptions. So add in his rushing upside on top of that. Look, Daniel Jones isn't going to be the guy you come out of your draft and he's not going to be the show and tell of your team. He's not going to go out and win you your league. I'm not going to say he might this year because that's just going to dig myself into a hole I don't want to try and dig myself out of. But I think the upside is there with Daniel Jones, where you're definitely not drafting him as your quarterback one. But if you're a person who likes to take 2 quarterbacks, if you have a guy top 4 or 5 quarterbacks, and you're looking for just a flyer to try and hit a home run on in the late rounds, Daniel Jones might be a good guy to see how he pans out. Only because he can get it done with his legs. He might stumble before he gets to the end zone, but he's a guy with Saquon. He gets it done. We forget he was knocking on the door, if not a top 10 quarterback when Saquon Barkley was healthy in 2018, had that insane upside, had that ready to break out season during his rookie year where he all surprised us. I don't know. I like Daniel Jones. Don't come out of your draft with him as your starter. But I think there's definitely a reason to have hope now that Saquon Barkley is back this year.
Fine, I'll move him up to 24.
That's okay.
I won't draft him, but I'll move him to 24.
That he's also in that range of quarterbacks from like 18 to 25, where you just don't know what to do with them because, I'd even say 16 to 25, where all those guys you can talk up for different reasons, and you could probably justify them. They're all quarterbacks you're not going to take as your QB1 is my point. But if you want to take a flyer on a quarterback, I think Daniel Jones, in my opinion, should be more towards the top of your list than not.
Yeah, I think at this current moment, all that I see with Daniel Jones is just quarterback 2, right? Like that's all I think, that's all I see. So I think it would be, he might sneak into that, like, your starters on a bye, and Daniel Jones has
spot start.
Yeah, the spot start, and he's got the really good matchup against like the 31st ranked defense or something.
The Cowboys.
Yeah, the Cowboys. Maybe I give him a chance, but definitely am not gonna put too much stock into Daniel Jones.
His ceiling is a high-end quarterback too.
Yeah,
for me at least.
Yeah.
I can agree that he might put up better stats than Saquon back, but I still think his ceiling's a high-end quarterback too.
Yeah, when you put it like that, you also think about it. You have, in reality, you should have one of the top 12 quarterbacks on your team. Anybody after that, you're probably not starting on a weekly basis. And that list probably ends at Jalen. Well, it ends at Jalen Hurts for me. But even once you start to get to that quarterback 12 range, the Matthew Stafford's, the trying to think of who else we have that high.
Cousins, Hurts. We got some Matthew Stafford, some Joe Burrow, Matt Ryan.
Yep. And those are all guys that I'm not excited to start on my team. So, once you hit that quarterback 10, it starts to get pretty thin. So, we've already go ahead. Wrap it up, Tyler.
So, just looking at his contract, he's going into his 3rd year of his contract. So, I remember when the draft was coming around, right? The big talk was, okay, you went out and signed Kenny Galladay, you signed Kyle Rudolph, you drafted Kadarius Toney. This is a make or break year. I don't really buy that at all. I think
next year's for sure.
Next year's for sure. Well, so I think they mostly said it's a make or break year because this is when the 5th year is decided at the end of the season. But I seriously, I mean, I don't know. It would be hard for me to say that he won't do better than he has in the past with all that he has available now.
Sure.
I feel like there's only a certain amount of quarterbacks that don't do better with what Daniel Jones has now, right? Like, so I would say don't be like, if you're looking for a quarterback too, don't be hesitant to take Daniel Jones,
right?
Just because you don't read into the headlines too much. That's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Worst case scenario, you drop him and you pick up a different quarterback.
You pick up the breakout running back that has gone off for the first 3 weeks.
Right. No one's going to say, they're only going to say, what were you thinking if you take Daniel Jones as your QB1?
Yeah.
That's the only time they'll say that.
Yeah.
So don't feel like you have to like pass on him when you're like, shoot, man, Baker Mayfield is sorry, I shouldn't have said that.
Don't put Baker in the same sentence as Daniel Jones right now.
Maybe, like Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Sure.
Someone like that where you're like, who do I take? Take Daniel Jones.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm still taking Fitzpatrick.
Wow.
Well, that's a good transition then, because the second team we're talking about then is the Washington football team, and Ryan Fitzpatrick is heading up that offense now. Gunslinging Ryan Fitzpatrick. Tyler, you got him at QB 24. Cameron at QB 23. I have him at QB 21, slightly ahead of both of you. But Cameron, you said you're taking Daniel Jones ahead of Ryan Fitz? No, did you say
I'm taking Fitzpatrick ahead of Jones?
All right, now explain your logic for that then. Why?
Fitzpatrick is a guy who can throw the deep ball, and he's going to put up points. He's going to put up points kind of like Jameis Winston did Tampa Bay in his last season, because he's just going to go out there and sling the ball. I mean, the dude is, 37 now or something like that?
He's old.
Yeah.
And he's been on so many teams where he's at the point where he's like, I'm just going to go out there and play football. And you saw that last year in Miami whenever he was in for Tua. I mean, he was just out there chucking bombs. Mm-hmm. And he throws the ball all around the field. He makes good reads. Like, there's a reason he's been in the NFL this long.
It's a reason why teams still use him as like a starting quarterback. Mm-hmm. He's a serviceable starting quarterback
who can throw the ball. And so I think he's going to put up fantasy points. I honestly think he's better for the rest of the football team players than he is for your own fantasy team. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, he inflates all of their rankings compared to his own.
Except for 2 guys, but we'll get to that later. Anyways, I 100% agree. I almost wonder if having him outside of the top 20 is a mistake, but only because he's going to be slinging the ball to the likes of Terry McLaurin. Now they have Curtis Samuel there, who I'll let you take the Curtis Samuel topic when we get there, but he's got great targets there now. And Logan Thomas is still there. He's got a dynamic running back in Antonia Gibson. I mean, he's got the weapons to make it happen. So maybe he does start slinging around and he's inside the top 20. I don't know. But again, not a guy you want to walk out of your draft with and flex that he's your QB1.
No.
Because I guarantee someone else in your league probably has Kyler Murray and Russell Wilson then on their roster. And that's not what you want.
No.
Well, let's move on to some of the pass catchers then, since we kind of started dipping into the wide receivers a little bit. Terry McLaurin, everyone thought he was going to have a breakout season last year, ended up missing quite a few games. Everyone's looking for him to bounce back this year. Like you said, Cameron, one of the guys whose value is likely impacted positively by the addition of Ryan Fitzpatrick. We all have him inside our top 15. We're all within one spot of each other. Tyler at 14, Cameron at 13, myself at 12. Tyler, what are your thoughts on Terry McLaurin? Is there any chance he breaks into that top 10 this year? And is there any chance he falls out of the top 15?
I think he has a better chance of going into the top 10 than he does falling out of top 15.
Okay.
I think he fits perfectly into that like 11 to 14 range, because I think we all have the same receivers 1 through 10, I think, with like Devontae, Tyreek, Diggs, DeAndre Hopkins, Slant Boy, Mike Thomas, Slant Boy, you heard me right. Keenan Allen, DK Metcalf, Calvin Ridley, Justin Jefferson. Then it's really between, like Allen Robinson, Amari Cooper, AJ Brown for that 10 spot.
Yep.
So I can understand like right now saying, yeah, he doesn't really crack the top 10, but I think McLaurin's in the best situation in all 3 years that he's been in Washington, right? Where
100%.
he's got a quarterback that realizes if you've got a top target, throw the ball their way. Don't don't try too much to disperse the ball. Go to your guys that you trust the most, and those are always going to be your top pass catchers. So, like I said, I think he has a better chance of going top 10 than he does falling out of the 15. But I also can see both happening.
Yeah.
Sure.
So,
yeah, I know we were discussing earlier. McLaurin's kind of one of those guys where you can't force him into the top 10, but you definitely can't drop him outside of your top 15.
Yeah.
It's just so tough to with a lot of those guys in that area to bump them higher. But you look at the guys after, and it's really tough to bump them any lower. Any last thoughts before we move on, Cameron?
I think he stays in the top 15 no matter where he's at. I think he gets up in that top 10 if he can put eight touchdowns or more on the board. I think that's where it kind of comes in, is if he can get good touchdown production, he can definitely be a top 10 guy, but he hasn't. He's had 7 touchdowns 2 years ago and 4 this last year. So he needs touchdowns to be a top 10 guy. But if he gets those, then he definitely can.
Sure. Absolutely. I don't disagree with any of that. Let's move on to the other guy across the field from him, Curtis Samuel. I should have come to Cameron for the last question because I told Tyler he could just take away the Curtis Samuel segment since he had the hot take of Curtis Samuel. We all have him mid to low. Well, Cameron and I have him late 30s. Cameron has him at wide receiver 37. I have him at wide receiver 38. Tyler's got him at wide receiver 28. And I feel like that somewhat adds into the hot take. So Tyler, go ahead. Give us all the numbers and reasoning for why Curtis Samuel is inside your top 30.
It would be my pleasure. So last year, Curtis Samuel was a member of the Carolina Panthers with a wide receiver room that included Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore. You could even throw Mike Davis in there too, just because Teddy was not throwing the ball downfield, so they needed to utilize
decent amount of work.
Right. So Curtis Samuel was not drafted a whole lot coming out of the fantasy drafts and stuff, but he soon became one of the hottest waiver wire pickups, solely because he finished wide receiver 10 after week 7.
So week 7 to week 17.
Yep. Was wide receiver 10. Wow. Yep. And before that, he was, let me check my notes, wide receiver 67. Yep. So that jump from 67 to 10 gives me some sort of optimism, and then made me want to check in on the stats and see what actually, took place with Samuel. And the numbers are astounding. So I'm just going to run through the total fantasy points from week 7 on.
Go for it.
16.8, 21.1, 26.5. Then he dipped down to 3.8, 21 the following week, 12.2, 15.8, 8.2, 20.6, and 18.8. Now, yes, the numbers that'll stick out are the 3.8 and the 8.2 or whatever. Name one wide receiver. I mean, you could give me a wide receiver.
Devontae Adams.
But I think you can realistically expect 1 or 2 games of any wide receiver to drop below double-digit.
Absolutely.
Well, for a RB or for a wide receiver 2 or flex, 100%.
Yes.
Your wide receiver 1s are wide receiver 1s for a reason. That's because you don't expect it from that. And you're not saying Curtis Samuel's going to be that guy.
No. Goodness, no. But so again, those were all week 7 towards the end of the season. Then the numbers before 8, 5, 8, 8, 10.
Yeah.
And the only difference, Joe Brady started to utilize him in the short game, right? Because they realized Teddy can't throw the ball downfield, right?
He got a cannon.
Yeah. Every once in a while they'd go, they go deep with DJ Moore. Because there were a couple of games where DJ Moore had like 20 points just off of 2 catches and a score. So like they did throw the ball downfield, but to get up the field, they utilized Samuel and Mike Davis the most.
Yeah.
And I think going to Washington now, Curtis Samuel is again the 3rd guy in line for targets behind McLaurin and Logan Thomas.
Yeah.
So this position that he's in, right, for fighting for targets is not, unfamiliar to him. And there's a reason why Ron Rivera, the current Washington coach, wanted Samuel in Carolina when he was in Carolina
Yeah.
in the first place, right?
Yeah.
So I think there is reason to believe in Curtis Samuel. And in most of the mock drafts I'm seeing, he's probably the one guy that drops the most out of all players. It's Deebo Samuel, him, and Jerry Jeudy. Those three guys are falling because everyone sees like, oh, look at the guys, I could get pretty much next round, but I'm just going to take him now because I don't trust any of those guys. There's one player you trust, it's Curtis Samuel, right?
Yeah.
He knows how to utilize the short game. And I think, what a combination that would be. You can run the ball with Antonia Gibson. You can go short with Curtis Samuel, get the defense to come forward, and then you hit a bomb to Terry McLaurin deep.
Yeah.
Oh, get out of here. So I think, like Lucas said, Curtis Samuel, wide receiver 28, I believe at least, is,
achievable.
Yeah, it's achievable and it's justified.
Yeah.
And I think my hot take of being a top 25 wide receiver isn't that hot, but I know some people will just because it's not a familiar name.
I think the only negatives for him is that Fitzpatrick is the guy who throws it down the field, and they're trying to use Gibson like that McCaffrey.
Yep.
And so Gibson might eat up some of those targets, but the numbers that you're throwing out are just ridiculous. So I was going to say that I was going to come at you hard, but you throw out those numbers and it's kind of like,
it's almost irrefutable.
It is. So
I mean, I think Curtis Samuel's a guy who could be underdrafted right now. He's a guy where if he's still on the board and you're looking at your wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4, instead of reaching for a running back, because everyone wants to panic for running backs once you get to those later rounds because they're just getting so depleted, don't miss an opportunity to probably take Curtis Samuel, and don't shy away. Don't be the person that lets him fall too far. And when you think, oh, I'm getting this guy to steal, someone swoops in right before you. Like take Curtis Samuel at his value right now.
And I will say too, one of the biggest talking points as to why Curtis Samuel won't produce like he did last year is because Curtis Samuel was involved in the running game. I'm just going to say this. He only scored 2 times rushing, which that's about the most that you see out of any wide receiver in terms of rushing.
Yep.
But the most yards he ever had in a game was 52, but that was off of, 9 carries or something.
Yeah. So
he was not as active as people like to think that he was. It was more so just a simple, reverse play and whatever. So if you hear someone say, well, he won't have the running game to help him out this year, don't buy it. The 2 games that he scored, 16 and 21 points, you take 6 off of those, that's still 10 and 15. That's still a flex worthy score. Yep. So don't buy any of the, the running game is going to hurt him. No, it won't.
All right. We spent a lot of time on Curtis Samuel, probably to talk you into moving him up about 5 spots of where you want to draft him, but hey, it's worth it. Let's move on to, we're going to have to clip through these players a little bit more quickly. Let's move on to Logan Thomas first. Let's talk about the other pass catcher. Tyler, you have him highest at tight end 6. I've been at tight end 10, and I thought I had him pretty low. And then I looked at Cameron's rankings, the master of tight end rankings over here. Cameron has him at tight end 15. I just want to, Cameron, I know you're the guy who's kind of like, look, if it's not the top 5 guys, I don't want them. And you'd rather take a flyer on a guy, in the later rounds. But I feel like Logan Thomas having him that low is a little bit disrespectful, but give me your thoughts on having Logan Thomas almost outside of your top 15.
No, for sure. I like Logan Thomas. I didn't actually realize I was moving him that low when I did. The thing is that I like everybody else I have in front of him more. So it's not that I think that he's going to have that bad of a season. I just actually think that the guys ahead of him are going to have a better season. Now that also means I think that 9 through 16 could be within 4 fantasy points this whole season. So it's not like me moving him that far back is not me going, he's unplayable. Like if I ended up with Logan Thomas as my tight end, I would not be upset. You know what I mean? I just think that there's so many other options this year. And so I just, that was my reasoning behind it. And Logan Thomas has definitely shown flashes. He just hasn't given me anything, but I'm solidifying him as a top 8 guy. So who I got ahead of him right now is
I can't wait for these names.
Pitts, so I got Pitts at 6, Goddard, Gesicki, Fant, Irv Smith, Robert Tonyan, Gerald Everett, Tyler Higbee, and Evan Ingram. All right, you can talk me into moving Thomas.
Gerald Everett's the only one I'm really going to groan at. But
So Gerald Everett.
we'll save Gerald Everett.
He's a guy for another time, but he's a sleeper tight end. You watch out for him. He will be a beast this year. Pete Carroll called him the fanciest tight end he's ever worked with. Don't know what that means, but it's good. So that's where I stand on Gerald Everett. And that is the reason I have Logan Thomas so small. He'll still get red zone targets because he's a tight end. I just think that so many other options in that offense, I think he's going to see some regression.
I mean, I'll back up your thoughts on Logan Thomas, not to the point where I'm going to drop him to 15, but
Shoot me.
Ryan Fitzpatrick, not notorious for throwing to tight ends. I mean, Mike Gesicki's the most recent one, and that was pretty much last season when he and Tua were basically like flipping
Every other game.
Yeah, right, exactly, right. And that was Gesicki's highest finish. So
For sure.
doesn't have the repertoire of throwing to tight ends. Games where Antonio Gibson was also in the game with Logan Thomas. Logan Thomas only averaged 34 receiving yards a game. So that's not super favorable. Granted, if it's 4 for 34 at 7 fantasy points, which is more than 75% of the tight ends I'll probably give you. But regardless, just the guys I like ahead of him too. Gesicki, Fant, and Pitts. I don't even remember who else I have there, but ended up 5 through I'll say 7 through 10 is almost personal preference in our opinion.
Yep.
But I don't disagree. I'm not super big on Logan Thomas this year. I was at one point, but I think with Fitzpatrick there and having a full repertoire of weapons, I think Logan Thomas does see more regression than people probably want to admit this year. But that's just my take. All right, let's get to these running backs before we get to a couple questions to wrap out the show. Mailbag. Antonio Gibson had a breakout season last year. He was a guy who I was on at the beginning of the year, and I'm regretful I told people to try and draft him because I really wanted Antonio Gibson in every draft I was in, but he never made it to me. Tyler, you have him highest at running back 11. Cameron and I have him at running back 13. How confident are we that he stays within the top 15? I'm going to ask you the same question I did with Terry McLaurin. What are the odds he cracks the top 10 running backs this year? And what are the odds he falls out of the top 15 running backs this year?
So based off of my ranking at running back 11, I think it's pretty good that he cracks the top 10 just because there's literally no statistical reason. It's literally just that there are some injury prone running backs in front of him that they could get injured. They're out for the season. So hello, top 10 for Antonia Gibson.
Yep.
So I think Gibson could break that low. I don't want to say lower tier, but I think he's at the bottom of that running back 1 bucket, I guess.
Yeah.
He's sniffing it for running back 2.
He's definitely, yep. So I think there's a good chance he cracks top 10, and especially because Ron Rivera also likes to have that running game option available in case his quarterback can't deliver a good ball. So yeah, top 10, I think, is a guarantee. I don't really see him going any lower than like 16, 17.
Then you start getting to the Josh Jacobs, J.K. Dobbins, Chris Carson range where, golly, if he falls behind J.K. Dobbins and Antonio Gibson, J.K. Dobbins and Josh Jacobs, who are
run only.
Pretty much almost locked into timeshares as well with their other running backs there, I'd be absolutely shocked. Don't disagree with you there. I've also heard hot takes of people saying Antonio Gibson can finish as a top scoring running back in fantasy. That's a hot take for a reason. We don't think that's actually going to happen.
That's a very hot take.
But I mean, hey, it was only last season that Ron Rivera said he sees Christian McCaffrey-esque qualities in Antonio Gibson. Ron Rivera was a coach when Christian McCaffrey started to have his breakout seasons. I'm not going to put it past Antonio Gibson to crack the top 10. I think it's a good chance he does, but I'm comfortable drafting him as a running back 2 right now. If he wraps around to you mid second round, late second round, absolutely should be all over Antonio Gibson.
For sure.
Last running back who kind of had who put up noticeable numbers in Washington last season. JD McKissick, last guy we'll cover. Tyler, you have him at running back 34. I've got him at 37. Cameron, you've got him at 40. You have him the lowest. I'm just going to ask you, why almost outside of your top 40 running backs, why so low on JD McKissic?
JD McKissic was a guy I held on to last
I was
year,
gonna say,
and I
you
tried to trade
traded
him to everyone. I really liked him. I mean, I think we were talking, he put up 80 plus receptions last year. Is insane,
I
but
think it was at 81.
that's gonna regress. You don't have Alex Smith anymore. You have Ryan Fitzpatrick. Curtis Samuel's gonna take those. Ron Rivera clearly trusts Curtis Samuel more, just because of the money he paid him. If Antonia Gibson is gonna start playing more like Christian McCaffrey, he's gonna be more involved. So that reception total is gonna go down, and that was the only thing that really made him fantasy relevant. Is if you take those away, I mean, he didn't score a ton of touchdowns and he didn't have a ton of yards.
I saw the one game. Apparently, he only scored once all season.
Yeah.
Apparently, I need to check that again. But the one game that he did score, knocked me out of the playoffs, and I won't let that go. I'm still pissed about that, but that's for another day. I digress.
I feel like we need to have like
A rant.
like a bonus pod of fantasy football rants that we've had within the last 3 years. No, don't disagree. He's going to see regression in the receiving game. I actually think he might be on the verge of being drafted at his ceiling. But the reality is he's not going to get 81 receptions. It's rare for a running back to crack 75, let alone 70. So absolutely regression's coming there. Don't feel like you're getting JD McKissic as like a sleeper or a steal. Certainly regression coming there
For sure.
I think if you take him as your like running back 4 for your team, that's perfectly fine, because you could just kind of bank on the off chance that he does catch a lot of passes again. But it's not I need a semi decent running back 3 or heck, a borderline running back 2. McKissic is that guy. No, that's not who he is anymore.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of regression, similar to Chris Thompson many years ago, where he had his one breakout season.
Well, that's a name to throw out there.
Wow.
Wow.
I think it's going to be very similar to Chris Thompson. Anyways, that closes out the New York Giants and the Washington football team. To close out the pod, let's get into a few mailbag questions. Let's see. Let's start with goodness. Who do we want to start with?
These are just awful questions. We can't even pick one.
I'm just kidding.
I got them all in front of me. I can't decide which one I want.
I'm kidding. They're amazing. Give us more. You guys are amazing. Hit the subscribe and follow button.
Let's start with, I'm going to start with this one only because I know Tyler's answer, and I think it reflects all of our answers, from Martin_Ethan11. Let's talk about the Raiders running back room. Are we able to trust Josh Jacobs as before? How will it impact his fantasy value with the addition of Kenyan Drake this year? Tyler, only because we don't have much time left. Synthesize your pessimism on Josh Jacobs.
I'm avoiding Josh Jacobs at all costs because he was never involved in the passing game to begin with. Now you add another starting caliber running back to the room in Kenyan Drake, who I think Gruden will fall in love with just right away, because he's going to see that Drake is just so much more capable than Jacobs is. So I'm not saying that Jacobs kind of falls into a backup running back territory, but it is 100% committee material, and I will avoid that. Even like last year, he struggled, like just inconsistent with carries and production and stuff. I'm avoiding him, or really any Raiders
running back
player, except for maybe Ruggs. Ruggs.
Waller. Can't
avoid Waller, but everyone else.
Yeah,
He
is teetering on below 3 yards of carry for his career.
That's so bad.
Yes.
It might be like 3.5, but it's ridiculously low. He is purely a volume play, and if Drake cuts into that volume, he's gonna be rockstar.
Dunzo.
So avoid Josh Jacobs unless we get him at like an insane
RB4,
RB4
of 8th round.
Point being, no, we don't trust any of the Raiders running backs. I think that's
maybe. Can I ask this, and we'll keep it short again? Would you feel better taking Kenyan Drake over Josh Jacobs?
No, I'm still taking Jacobs.
Touchdown upside with Josh Jacobs.
Just goal line carries. Yeah,
sure.
Yep.
Okay.
Yet Kenyan Drake had a ton of goal line carries for Arizona last season. So I guess I don't want to say Josh Jacobs will 100% get those, but Josh Jacobs is a more downhill back.
Yeah.
And I think that's the only reason why. So
Yep.
touchdown upside is probably more with Josh Jacobs, the Kenyan
Sure.
Drake. Cameron, this one will probably be short from Aiden I'm going to butcher this. Mashi, Mashy. Man, I should not be reading mailbags. Mashy.
We're going mashy.
Goodness, I'm so sorry, Aiden. I'm going to nail this on the next episode when we answer your other question. When's the best time to start a redraft?
All right, Mr. Mashy. I'm gonna go with probably 3 weeks before the NFL season starts. I think right when preseason is starting, that would be a good time to start. Just because at that point, your depth charts are getting finalized. You kind of know where you're taking people. If you take it before, there's just so many more question marks, which you can do.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's a bad time to start it. It's
Yeah.
just for me personally, I would rather go into it knowing, all right, I'm taking this guy rather than every team making 8 waiver wire moves before the season even begins.
Mm-hmm.
I think part of it is you just have to know the logistics of the actual logistics of the draft
Yes.
itself. Like I know there's a lot of leagues that'll start now. It'll do slow drafts over the span of 2-3 weeks.
Yeah.
Because people are going to sit and wait and do their research on their picks, but also see, if there's any rumors that come out within a reasonable time. Right. So I would agree. I think the best time is to start right in the middle of preseason. So I'd be 2-3 weeks before the regular season, only because less chance of injury and depth charts start to get finalized and any rumors that were out there kind of swirling you kind of get rid of those by the time the season starts.
Last thing you want is one of your top first round picks getting hurt in preseason and then you are out before the season even starts.
I remember a person who drafted Jordy Nelson before his ACL injury to start the season a few years back, and they were peeved. So that is another perk of drafting closer to the start of the regular season to avoid peeved owners like that.
Yes.
So that is all we have time for today. We'll get to a few of our other questions in the next episode coming to you on Friday. Any final thoughts from you two fellas?
Keep up the good work.
Whatever you're doing, keep up
if
the
you're
good
at school, if you're at a job, keep up the good fight.
Keep on keeping on.
We're just 3 stooges being dudes. We're the fantasy football fellas. Deuces.
Deuces.